Esta é a sua chance de se destacar no mercado com a FAM. Já imaginou fazer a graduação dos seus sonhos em um centro universitário reconhecido com nota máxima no MEC, localizado estrategicamente ao lado do metrô e da CPTM, com uma infraestrutura de mais de 100 laboratórios e com alto índice de empregabilidade? Garanta sua matrícula por apenas R$ 99,00 e pague sua próxima mensalidade somente em março. Inscreva-se em vemprafan.com.br e confira as condições.
It's the Larry Kudlow Show. Free market prosperity starts here. Now, here's Larry Kudlow.
And we're going to talk economics with the best of the best. My pal John Carney, Breitbart news editor for economics and finance, and co-author of the must-read Breitbart Business Digest, which has a cult following, but I think it's bigger now than a cult following. Anyway, John Carney, I had an interesting interview with Senator Marsha Blackburn, who, by the way, is going to run for governor in 26. Didn't exactly say that, but she said we're looking at it very closely. But she made a point. I just wanted to get your quick take on it. You know, one big, beautiful bill, I've been crusading and advocating for that. Get it all in there. Don't delay the tax cuts. I think what I heard her say is that in the Senate they're thinking about extending the 2017 tax cuts as part of one big, beautiful bill. And then the new tax cuts would come later in another bill. I think that's what I heard her say. That's the first time I've actually heard that. I don't know, maybe you've heard it before. So
Stidler brought the idea up to me, and it makes some sense because, look, the extending the tax cuts that we already have, first of all, are absolutely crucial. If those were to go away, as you put it very well, the Republicans would be responsible for the single largest tax hike in American history. We cannot have that. And it's very simple because it's already the law. All you have to do is say either they're permanent or we're extending them another 10 years. It's very easy. The newer tax cuts, I think actually the Social Security part of it, not taxing Social Security, would be really easy because that, again, is a very simple change. Some of the other things, like not taxing tips, will be more complicated. And so if they have to delay that a bit, I can understand. The reason why that's more complicated is because we have to make sure that not everything can be turned into tips. I mean, Larry, I'm sure you would like it if all of your salary from the Fox show would just become a tip instead. Right?
No, absolutely. News hosts should get paid in tips, tax-free. I'm all for it.
Well, yeah, so that's going to take a little while longer to work out. And I would rather have that if they have to delay something, let's do that, but make sure we get the extension of the tax cuts. Particularly, I care about what's going to happen to the individual and small business tax cuts. Remember, a lot of those tax cuts went through small businesses that are pass-throughs. And if those are not allowed to continue, if they expire at the end of this year, that will be, as Scott Bessent said, it has the potential for being a economic calamity, bringing the economy to a stop suddenly. And we don't want that.
I know. I could live with that. I could absolutely live with that. And by the way, you know, Mike Crapo and Senator, I asked Senator Blackburn about this. You know, Crapo's idea that it's really current policy, it's permanent current policy, and does not have to be rescored. Just like the current services baseline for spending is never rescored, they just throw in there. You don't. There's no, $4 trillion hit to the deficit.
I think that's right. The idea that it is somehow deficit increasing. And I think actually what we would see was the thing that would actually be deficit increasing would be a massive tax hike because of what that would do to economic growth. If you raise taxes, the amount that would raise it, if these tax cuts were allowed to expire, it would slow down the economy so much that I do think that would actually be hurt tax revenue. Yeah. And so they're going to score it wrong, even if they do score, because the CBO will never look at it that way.
Yeah, well, they're going to have to. What they need to do is just roll CBO. Just roll over them because they're always wrong. I mean, David Asman was showing up. We had a full screen on it in the TV show. Corporate taxes actually doubled through FY24 from 2017. There's a 10-year window through 2027. But actually, so far, corporate tax revenues have not gone down. They've doubled. They've gone up almost.
On Friday, the CBO came up with some updated scoring about where they think the deficit's going, and it's already wrong. They are way underestimating what growth is likely to be this year, next year. They have growth very quickly falling to 1.8%. And I don't think that's in the cards unless we have some sort of economic catastrophe that's unforeseen. We are going, especially if we are able to extend the tax cuts, we should be growing close to or above 3% over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think so. You have better growth, better balanced growth. Right now, the growth is, with all the government stimulus, it's heavily towards consumer growth. Government's literally injecting money into your checking account, which is inflationary. But the 100% depreciation, immediate expensing, which is, I think, this year down to 20%, goes back to 100%, and that includes things like, I think, John, the R&D tax credit and stuff like that. You'll get I think a big move in manufacturing and business capex and all that, which is what's been missing during the Biden years.
That's right. If we're able, and we should be able to, very quickly revive the manufacturing sector, that has been according to ISM, it's been in contraction for 25 of the last 26 months, 9 months in a row so far. Reversing that would bring back growth to a really much, as you said, much more balanced level, not so much just on consumer spending, not so much just on the services sector. And that would really help us grow, I think, for years to come. It should be really easy to do. The Republicans really should look at it this almost as an emergency. We will be facing a recession. Eventually recessions happen. They always happen. But the best way to bring it on would be a massive tax hike. So they need to avoid that.
So your latest piece, The Ballad of Bidenflation, Farewell to Bidenomics. I don't really think we're going to mourn the end of Bidenomics.
No, part of it. One of the things I wanted to point out in that piece was how bad a lot of the mainstream economics, both from economists and from economic pundits, people at the New York Times, how bad they were when the possibility of inflation was coming up. They got it incredibly wrong. I quote in there a column from the New York Times, which basically said that it was all just a Republican psyop, that we weren't really going to have inflation. There was nothing to be worried about, that we had been warning about inflation for so long, and there was no reason for anybody, for the Democrats to worry about it. That turned out to be, a disastrous decision for the economy, but frankly, also for the credibility of the New York Times, the credibility of Democrats. I think it cost them the election. If they had not, look, I'm very glad Donald Trump won, but if they had been more attentive to the actual economic consequences of their programs, if they realized very early on that the American Rescue Plan did not need to be anywhere near as large as it was, then we would have had less inflation and they would have stood a chance of being reelected. I think once they created the inflation crisis that we are still living through, the Democrats were doomed.
So it's interesting, just in the last little bit here, what we need is less money printing from the Fed and more goods from the supply side. That's what we need. And I think that's what you're going to get from the Trump administration, production of more goods and energy. So that's good. But I'm still worried about the Fed. The Fed is just, the The Fed is the Fed, man. They should do nothing. Just do nothing because they're always wrong.
Trump should actually declare, now that we know presidents can just declare things like Biden declaring the ERA as part of the Constitution, he should declare a vacation for the Fed.
Yes.
Just put them all, like Scott Bassett wants everybody to return to work. What if we do the opposite for the Fed? We just tell them they're not allowed to come into work for the next year. Oh. Then we can decide what we need to do.
What a wonderful idea. That's right. No Zoom calls. Nothing. Don't fill up the building. It's okay. Go down south. We'll have a permanent White House scheduler for golf time for Fed governors.
We can send them to Jekyll Island where it all started, and they can play golf down there. It's great.
That's wonderful. John Carney, you are the best of the best, buddy. We'll be talking next week. Thanks ever so much. Folks, we're going to take a quick break. On the other side, my pal Ken Paul Carey will talk to us a little bit about the stock market. I'm Kudlow. Please stick around.
This is the Larry Kudlow Show.